Thank you. So good afternoon, everybody. I would like to call this meeting, special of November 25th, 2022 to order at 1:09 p.m. We'll stay seated for a moment of silent reflection. Thank you very much. As we gather this afternoon, I would like to acknowledge on behalf of council and our community that we are meeting on the traditional territory of the Algonquin people. We would like to thank the Algonquin people and express our respect and support for their rich history. And we're extremely grateful for their many and continued displays of friendship. We also thank all the generations of people who have taken care of this land for thousands of years. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest in the general thereof? Seeing none, is there any correspondence?
No.
So we'll move on to the business for which the meeting was called, and we begin with 5.1, which is the service review. And at this point, I would ask Shayla to maybe introduce the team she has with her here today. And then we will introduce council to your team and start with the business for the meeting.
Thank you so much, Mayor Bros. So I am no stranger to you all, but my name is Shayla Brecken, and I'm here representing as the project manager and key point person of contact in the service review tract. And with me today, I have two of my amazing team members from the firm, Michelle Sherry and Maria Hughes, and I will allow them to introduce themselves.
So, my name is Michelle, and I'll be working closely with Maria and sort of the research monitoring evaluation side and reporting as well. My name is Maria, and I'm the director of special projects. That's with Sheila Lee, and this is the special project that we're very happy to be engaged in, and we will, Michelle said, take care of the back ends where the research is, the writing, the report writing, the analysis, the methodology, all of that will be taken care of.
And Holly Hayes is also a member of this project team who sends her regrets today for her family emergency. But she is our HR specialist and strategist coming into this setting, and she's also local to the South Algonquin area and also very familiar with this township and what we're all up to here. So thank you so much for the invitation to introduce.
Thank you, and we certainly look forward to working with you and your team. I will start by saying I'm the mayor, James Bros, for this municipality. This is my third term in municipal politics, and my second term as mayor, and I'm very, very pleased that I have the exact same council together from the previous term, and we certainly know you, Shayla, and look forward to working with the rest of your team. Thank you. No?
I'm Council Bernard. I've been on council for this is my third term, same as Mike Rose, and I have really enjoyed working with this council.
I'm Doug Buchwald. It's my fourth term, and ditto. Glad to have you guys helping us with this.
I'm Janet Reggie-Shainfeld, and this is my second term.
Hi, I'm Michelle Beck. I'm the clerk treasurer for this municipality.
And I'm Laura Griffith, I'm the deputy clerk, and I'm just going to ask if you could speak up a little bit. We use the meeting owl, and Councillor Robinson is attending virtually and having a little bit of time to hearing. And Maria,
Thank you. Good try for sure.
Councillor Robinson?
Yes, Mayor Bros, I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Maria Robinson, council for North Algona, and my second term on council.
Thank you. So I will now turn it over to Shayla, and if you want to take the meeting over.
Thank you so much. So I'm going to position my body here. Is that okay on the camera for Maria? Is she going to see me in this from this vantage point? Okay, great. Wonderful. All right. So Thank you so much for joining us here today. The purpose of this meeting is to review all of the items of importance for the service review contract to ensure that we're all on the same page and every expectation has been clarified, processes, roles, points of contact, all those things. So we're going to go through a whole lot of housekeeping today just to make sure that everybody is on the same page. And then at the end of our meeting, I am going to open up for perspectives, vision from you all as the leaders of this community of what you see for this. And we will zoom right out and think of things thematically that you can see as important for you as an individual elected official in this process. We have engaged that level of conversation already with the staff team, and we will continue to deepen that information and knowledge as we go through the process. So today it's all about council and informing you all. So please, of course, Mr. Mayor, you can let me know how things will go for questions. Or will you be entertaining questions on the fly, or how would you like to coordinate discussion as we go?
If you can start with the review, the scope of milestones and deliverables, and then we can start picking up questions after that.
Fantastic, thank you so much. All right, so I have a slide deck that was prepared just to help cue me as we go through here and some high level information so that we didn't have a lot of text to be bogged down in. But you were provided as well with an agenda in digital copy. All right, thank you so much. So there's the first page and we can move right forward there. Wonderful. So we are going to review 6 milestones of importance in this meeting today, working right through from well, we've done the introductions, and then now we're going to talk about scope of work and deliverables, high level, and that's going to be literally the documents. What are we going to produce? The physical, tangible outcome of this report, contract. We're also going to talk about communications. How are we going to stay on track and make sure that everyone feels involved and on top of the timeline, as it is a swift one. And we also are going to review our approach for consultation internally and externally, and have a discussion about the external for certain and internal realities, vacations and so on, I expect are on the horizon. And then we will also discuss privacy and confidentiality today, so that we are honoring the fact that we are talking about people and their jobs and their compensations. And so this will be an important factor of this meeting. And then the final piece, like I mentioned, is going to be some visioning questions and high level themes that you all have for marked as important in your perspectives. You can move on to the next slide, please. Thank you. All right, so this is just a summary of my team. So the core members of this project team are as such. We're all here today except for Holly, and we've already done our introductions. But from a roles and responsibilities perspective, I am the project manager and will be the chief point of contact for Michelle. And her and I will jockey, and may I say the clerk, because we have 2 Michelles on the team officially. So the clerk and I will liaise ongoing as the primary points of contact, and then we will dispel from there in our respective teams. I'm also the lead strategist on this account, which means that fundamentally the recommendations will all be reviewed and stamped by my hand. Holly Hayes is our specialist that we've pulled into this contract to offer us the human resource specialties and her experience as a CAO at South Algonquin, and also the governance and HR work she's done for DND and Algonquins of Ontario and other organizations. She will also be a strategist and advisor throughout the entire program. And of course, you've met Maria, who is our lead researcher. She's our lead copywriter and editor, and of course, strategic advisor as well. Maria has extensive experience working in policy and in human realities, and has an extensive background in the political science and law. And so Michelle will be assisting, Michelle Schrick will be assisting from a research perspective, developing the external reviews, analysis, and the measurement components of our program project together. All right, next slide, please. Thank you. All right, so what I want to talk about in here, there are 6 core deliverables inside this contract as per the RFP response. So the very first one is a teeny one, but it's a report based on the summary of decisions made from this meeting. So we are going to take notes throughout this meeting of what is decided and what is tweaked based on what we presented, and record that into a summary document that is deliverable on the 30th. So that's a quick turnaround, but basically that's important so that everything's documented as a referral or a reference sheet for us throughout the program. So that's our first deliverable coming up there on the 30th, and really just a tool for us to maintain continuity. The second one here is the largest deliverable that we have in the program, which is the service review report. So this one won't come until that first sort of Wednesday after the holidays on January 3rd. And this again will be presented in a draft format, and we will have review cycles that I'll refer to soon. And so this report will summarize all the findings. What did we learn? Why will we rationalize the recommendations will be in here? And then we'll also have the planning tools, change management, and the other items of importance inside that packet. And those, as I mentioned, are all due first week of January on the 3rd. And by the way, we did iron out that specifically due date means 4 p.m. on that date. Okay. Wage study report is due on December the 20th. This is a more micro report that informs the second one here. And so the wage study will have key considerations and will be a source document for the January 3rd report, which will include the recommendations. You can advance the slides. And then this one, coupled with it, so same timeline as the salary grid. So actually presenting the revised grid, the reasons for the changes, and of course, we have also included in our pitch to you all about including some non-financial opportunities to provide compensation, similar to what you did about closing the office occasionally. So there's some private time for the workers to work. That's an example of those kinds of things. And that will be due as well on the 20th of December so that it's heading into the portfolio ahead of the holiday. We also are aware that you're closed between Christmas and New Year's, save for the Friday before New Year's. So we've been briefed on that hourly schedule for the staff. And then finally, our larger, more robust final reporting will happen in the second week of January. So this one here in the green is the pay equity. And this one, we're making sure that we have further time over the holiday to ensure that that study is done very well from our back end perspective. So we will provide that one on the 9th. And then the final report is actually just a culmination of all of these others that have already been reviewed, and we package it all together and present this finally to Michelle on the 11th. Okay, this would mean that all of the review cycles have already been applied, and the final compilation is coming to you on the 11th, and then you get another couple of days to look it over one more time. Okay, so technically you all the staff gets a review cycle and then council at the very end, okay, on each of the components. Any questions about the deliverables? And the timelines? Yes.
I'm just curious as to the scope. Are we getting into that more in depth? Because I don't see anything in there about like workload or job functions, that sort of thing, which I would envision would be part of a service review.
That's right. So the service review on the previous slide, that deliverable, the second deliverable, in your proposal, it outlines all of the pieces and components that we would be reviewing. And so for the sake of the brevity of the slides, we didn't dive into the exact elements, but it is exactly as presented in the proposal. So we will be reviewing job profiles, job descriptions. We will be reviewing what is currently being done, because we're going to interview everybody to find out what's actually being done. We're going to compare that against policy. We're going to look at who has a contract and who doesn't have a contract. We're going to look at where everybody is at with respect to pay and other financial benefits like equipment, vehicle use, anything like that. We're also going to look at external grids, so comparing and contrasting to communities of similar nature. We will look beyond this region, but we know how important local is to the competition reality. So we'll be providing both of those. And we are also going to look in as a value add in the proposal at the political honorarium, the elected official honorarium structure as a value add to that same process, but sort of on the honorarium side. And a special feature of this particular review cycle is fire. and how that is particularly done between a mixture of honorarium and wage. So, those will have to be specially reviewed as a special case, and certainly taking a look at multidisciplinary roles deeply.
Yeah, because we do have
Many shared kind of.
several of those, yes.
Yeah, exactly. So those complexities are already known to us at a high level. And so we will be driving right down through all of those elements. Yeah, and so policy, so if I'm gonna say from policy and bylaw right through to contract level. And then standard operating procedures may also be recommendations or processes that we take a look at as a bonus.
And I think you've answered a couple of the questions. For the value added, that would be like food allowance or dental or those kind of things. Is that under value added there?
So a little separate adjacent to that, so benefits would definitely be like your health benefits and the things that would actually cost the municipality
Right.
money in the back end, whether it ends up in the pocket of the staff member, it's intangible perhaps. But these items are more about flexibility, job hours,
Right, okay.
remote work. All those kinds of things that don't cost the municipality, it's more about the coordination and preferences for the folks.
Okay.
So we know that in modern workplaces, we can see so many cool ways to rebuild how work is done or where work is done or the tools we use, things like that, and they don't cost. So when I say no, a value add there, it's the non-financial,
Right, okay.
whether it's direct or indirect.
But then you're also looking at those other tangible ones.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we're gonna look at incentives and motivation compensation as a holistic perspective,
Right.
rather than just salary.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thanks.
it's gonna come from all those best practices, yeah. And
Councilor
culture.
Robinson, do you have any questions?
I think they were answered in the questions that were raised by Councillor Rocky Schoenfeld and Councillor Buckwald.
Wonderful.
Okay,
Good question.
And actually, Mr. Mayor, actually, something was that, we actually have a copy of the proposal available for review during the meeting.
You can provide that here.
If we, it would just might help us prevent some of the questions that we have that material available at some point.
You can provide it after the meeting, if that's.
Yeah, actually, I think, yeah, for me, that would be okay, because again, if there's gonna be communication back and forth.
Yeah.
Okay,
And I'm happy to keep diving on that level, ask for your questions, that's what I'm here to do today. For sure, let's walk the trail.
Yeah.
Love it, so in the end, each of the deliverables is broken out into a table in our proposal, and it has very specific timelines, resources, people involved, and then what we're gonna do is in quite a big, like, sort of activity section. What we're gonna look at. So if there are any questions about the wording and what that means, you can always let me know through Michelle for clarification or whatever's required. Yeah, beyond this meeting, if you can't clarify today.
so when you were talking about looking at job descriptions, comparing to other municipalities, et cetera. From that, you'll probably come to some conclusions on where our salary grid currently stands and where we should consider maybe it has to go.
That's right. That's right. So the salary grid itself will be examined from 3 perspectives. So the first, you've already passed a bylaw about annual increases across the board for inflation and cost of living realities. That's been done. So we're going to take a look at that and how that was done and just inform ourselves. But the other perspective is about performance management movement. So how do you move from step 1 to step 6 over time? And the specific items in the RFP speak to merit. And so what we have to investigate is what is merit and what is the performance review protocol to determine when merit is deserved. And so that process feeds the movement on the grid. And so we will look at that process as a necessary leading indicator to merit movement-based grids. So seniority is just a simple how many years have you served, but merit-based grids, of course, requires a performance evaluation to be able to move. And then we're looking at when you're at the top, it's just the annual increase is the ceiling, right? So then we're gonna look at it from a pay equity perspective. So is there equality or coming together, convergence of different roles at different grids? Who belongs on which grid? And at what rates? So there may be recommendations about how to close those gaps if they're detected. Okay, so that's sort of like annual, performance, and then equity.
And will you be just looking at paper, or are you gonna interview various employees?
Yeah, that's something we're gonna get to that, and who we'd like to talk to, but yeah, it's an extensive one-on-one interview list.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
So just one other question on the salary grid. So will you come back with a process, or will it be part of the work, I should say, scope of work, where when you talk about merits, if somebody's job description changes during the course of our next 4 years, is there a process, a step to follow to indicate whether or not they should be a change on the salary grid?
Right, so classification is what you're talking about, which is how does the job duty add, shift them on the grid, right? A change. And so the hope is that we will have a package for you that compartmentalizes by duties, so that when you add specific categories or take away specific categories of duties, you'll understand which direction you need to go, or to flip completely to a new grid. Potentially. Okay, so yes, all of those tools will be broken down on a granular so that you can see, because it's not about whole job changing in its entirety. Like, we know that the multi-hat roles, it's sort of just you add a mini portfolio maybe. So what does that mean? And so we believe that the outcome is going to look like segmentation of duties and what.
I see Councillor Robinson has a question. Councillor Robinson?
I guess the question, when we talk about merit, I guess there's a scale, because sometimes what do we do if someone's underperforming, and how is that going to be managed within this deliverable review?
Right. So the first step for us, Councillor Robinson, is to take a look at what is in existence and how it's working now. And then we will take a look at all directions on the performance grid, right? So it's really just understanding how you're going to move people around on it. And with that, it requires both direction analysis.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I think we're ready to move on.
Ready to move on? Okay, I'll let Michelle scroll through here. Okay, so I wanted to take some time to sort of stretch out what reviews and edit cycles look like on a very practical level. So the first thing that was determined in our meeting on Tuesday with staff was that our draft reports, as indicated in the deadlines on the previous slides, are going to go to these 4 people first. So Michelle, Laura, Cameron, and Karen will receive the draft reports first. And they will have either a 2-day business cycle or a 5-day business cycle review term for us to get them back to meet the timelines. And so we've segmented them into 2 groups, the 2-day business day turnaround and this 5-day business day turnaround. And so the first is 3 reports will have a 2-day turnaround. The launch meeting report coming on the 30th was just the summary of this, so chances to feedback and say, whoops, we made a wrong note there. Then we will also have the wage study and the salary grids that come down on the 20th. We have until everyone goes on holidays to get your edits back on those things. And when I say edits, I mean comments, feedback, input from Michelle and the team. And then we will move things forward after that, of course, and apply those comments. And then in the edit section here, this is the longer runway. So when we have the 7 days or 5 business days to do the review cycling is for the 2 larger reports, which is the service review and the pay equity, which are coming in January. Okay, so January 3rd for the largest document, so that we have that big runway before the 10th to have everyone take a look at it. Okay, so Michelle and team will get it first. And then council, I suspect Michelle will make a decision about when it goes to council. And then of course, the final report will come on the 11th, and that should reflect all of those review cycles. And that's when council will do your final review prior to presentation. Okay, and then of course, that final presentation is where we come in and explain what you've already read and looked at in your package. And then we have an opportunity to further advance edits or refinements after that as well. So technically it's staff review cycles listed here. council review when it's swift and ready to go, and then the final edit section after presentation. So 3 review cycles are embedded into this and on different timelines. Okay, any questions about that part? Good. It's very lots of review cycles, but we love to be collaborative and ensure we're honoring your needs, so. Good, okay, thank you. You can scroll over there. I just got some cues here on my computer, so I'm gonna push another link to. Okay, perfect. All right, so these are the points of contact that we were informed about in our meeting, and so if there's any errors on here, we can certainly make the changes. So Michelle will be my primary point of contact, the final control point, as we say. First point of contact, final point of contact. And also contract issues, so if there's any major derailments of this contract or anything happens on the risk level, we go going right to Michelle in an immediate and urgent matter. And then document provisions, and she's also going to help us access some of the documents that we need internally. Laura is going to help us out with booking this room and making sure that we have those logistic realities ironed out, and also helping us with documents, and of course one of our interview respondents. And then Dawn, pardon me, I wasn't aware of her official titles. I just see Dawn as a placeholder, but that's my ignorance. But booking the Golden Lake Lodge to have some consultations. We assumed external communications may be arranged by Dawn for town halls, working with Laura and that kind of thing. And of course, logistics here and there. I suspect that's really light on Dawn's workload. But ultimately, we have agreed to a weekly communication cycle regardless of all reporting and anything else. So what it means is that Monday morning, Michelle will receive, the team of 4 will receive a weekly recap email from me. And it'll just describe the work that was done that week and any questions we may have and next steps included. So that's a Monday morning deliverable every week until we're done. So council, of course, can access those if they so choose. All right, we can move forward if there's no questions about that. Okay, so we wouldn't be doing a small town strategy if we weren't talking to the community. So part of the RFP requirements were to consider a town hall focus group or some type of consultation in the community. The timeline isn't as generous as our strategic plan to be able to meet with many focus groups and individuals. And so we are proposing a larger event strategy. I recognize that COVID is always the moving part in that storyline, but our proposal is to host this on the 15th of December, which is, I believe, a Thursday evening, or Thursday, I should say, and that we might hold it at a municipal space, perhaps in Golden Lake or here, but that we would have 2 sessions, one in the afternoon for folks that may be available during the daytime, and then an evening one for folks that may be working and not available during the daytime. And the purpose of this session would be to gather perspectives on the customer service side of the township. So the services and how they're received and how they're interpreted by the constituents, and just understanding what is of importance with respect to engaging with services and staff here. And when I say that, I mean broadly all of the future stuff that may happen as well too. So that's our proposal. We also are recommending that there's a bit of a runway on promoting this event as we have very short timeline. We've recommended to think about a 3-week run for the leader and some social media posts and other communications that might be normal for you, website updates and so on. And so if we are going to make the paper next week on Wednesday, it means we have to have an ad ready to go kind of Monday. So that's a bit of a quick turnaround, but we can definitely assist if there's needs for design or whatever. But I figured we had to talk about this timely matter today and make a decision about whether we'd like to support this proposal or not for the consultation. The alternative is doing targeted groups and inviting them, but we run the risk that no one's available because it's holidays. And if we push to the week between Christmas and New Year's, we're going to miss a whole bunch of people. And if we push to after New Year's, we're already heading way into the deadline framework and we won't be able to apply conscientiously the feedback. So from my perspective, the highest risk is to do anything but this. We've boiled this down to the best case that we think we can pull off in this timeline.
Yes, Councilor Buckle.
I like the idea of an open invitation and the targeted invitations as well,
Mhm.
just to make sure that, because again, the leader is a good way to get things out for most people, but it's not always timely. Because again, some people don't pick it up to the end of the week type thing, so there's the ways there. And again, even with our website, it's not all, people aren't always checking it. So I think targeted invitations, to people that we already have contact information for, I think it's definitely a good idea to get as many people out as possible. Because I think it's really important that the public feels that they are a part of this process, because they are the people that the service review is serving. Well, I think if we can get a lot of people in, I think that'd be very beneficial.
I agree with your points, and I think there's a way to do targeted invitations. I'm worried about targeted events, micro events. So if we do targeted invitations, I think we might be able to cover that ground. Really encourage them to come to the 2 o'clock or the 6:30 session.
Exactly.
Is that what you're meaning?
Yeah, just for the outreach as opposed to just relying on
Right.
either the local media or our social media, to actually put the message out there directly to certain groups or certain individuals.
Yes. Very much so, yeah.
I think Maria had a question.
Yes, Maria.
Yeah, yes, I was thinking, also that we still do need to run it in the paper. There are enough, groups such as the, you know, Lake Dory Property Association, the Golden Lake Property Association, that can also be areas where we can, send this information out, but, we need to make sure that we have those residents that probably would not see either the paper or the social media. That is a concern. Sorry.
And we also have that communication tool on our website, right? So that, and the other thing too is that Pembroke Observer newspaper that comes out, at least maybe running one ad in that, simply because not everybody gets the leader. But that's far reaching, so a person could live in Pembroke, not get the leader, but still have a property in Golden Lake or in Dory. So something like that, big and bold, might get some attraction from those residents.
Yeah, that's an excellent point, and I can see an opportunity to work with Cameron as well, who's on the ground level. As she's attending different meetings and engaging with different partners, and spreading the word of mouth as well, and maybe a printed card for putting in her backpack. And Jill, perhaps.
And there are some key, like, businesses, like the pharmacy, I think in Golden Lake, or, you know, there might be some places like the Rankin Community Center where people are there a lot that might just have not read it, have not heard it, but then, you know, see it.
And we have quite a list of folks that we contacted for the BRE study, so we still have that entire roster of the 62 or 42 respondents there. And then, of course, the strategic planning groups, focus groups. So I think between targeted emails, some posters, some, you know, postcards and socials and web papers should be fairly exhaustive. So we really just need to make a decision about the timing and whether that works with council and whatnot. Staff is, I know it's a tight runway, so I don't recognize that it's an ask, so.
Is the 15th, what day is
I
that?
think it's a Thursday.
Okay.
Yeah, just trying to not make it a Friday and not too early, so we have the
Sometimes
leader.
I think Monday people do forget, so Thursday.
Thursday's okay, yeah.
So just one of the risks, and maybe you've considered it, is that if you have 300 people show up, we're not gonna get them all into the Golden Lake Community Center. We certainly wouldn't get them in here.
Yeah.
Is there another, another option would be the Rankin Community Center. I know we have to pay a rental fee there, but that is a possibility. I'm even wondering if there's gonna be an opportunity for people who may want to attend in person, as well as would it be zoomed at the same time?
That's a great suggestion. I'm gonna talk specifically to my facilitation plan in one of the privacy sections, because one of the things that we've learned in town hall consultations is that sometimes if there's a couple of really vocal folks that you're dominating the microphone, so to speak, in a large room, we certainly want to be able to compartmentalize and create breakout tables so that people are having more targeted conversations to a topic, and not necessarily letting that spiral effect happen in a big room where it becomes a complaint fest. Okay, so we want to get really good information, not just venting. And so we know that this requires an upfront presentation of expectations to everybody in the room, and then table discussions, rather than step up to a microphone and tell the story that you have as one person. So we want to break those rooms down, or the room down into, you know, say one group talking about recreation, one group talking about garbage, one group, you know, whatever they decide are categories of importance, and then we break them up. And they can choose, and then we'll round robin them to where rotation level. So I do think a bigger space is needed just for the logistics of that alone. But I will deflect and defer to staff to make those choices. But that is our ideal state.
Councillor Buckle.
I think Rank and Rec, if it's available on that date, would be a good venue for at least one session. It would be nice to have sessions in 2 different locations, just to be inclusive to other members of the community, but again, for our own facilities, we don't have much as far as large room, and we don't know what kind of response we're going to get. Unfortunately, if it's typical to what we get to some of these things, we could probably fit them all in here with room to spare. But I'm hoping that the public takes this as an opportunity to come in and have their input. So I'd rather be prepared with larger spaces than smaller ones.
And we're happy to entertain 2 sites, for sure.
And the one nice thing at Rankin, they do have little breakout rooms you can go to too, so then you're not talking over somebody, or sometimes you're listening and getting distracted by another group, so there's a few places where you could go take a group. So that they'd be isolated but still there, and then like I like the idea of a little bit of a carousel, simply because a person might have, you know, feels passionate about recreation and something else. So then they have the opportunity to, you know, go to that group and voice their concerns in 2 different ways.
So is this something that has to be decided today for the ad, or could the location be included in next week's ad? I guess is my question.
That's totally up to staff. I think a date, say the date is an immediate action item, location could come, yeah. But I think staff can make a decision on that. I just wanted to be sure that council was feeling good about the approach, before we take steps. And we can do, like a Golden Lake version of that, even earlier in the morning, say the same day. Do a morning session in Golden Lake and then 2 in Rankin. That's great. We, you know, we're in for the day, we're in for the day, so we can make it work. Even 1 here too, like there's nothing wrong with that. They only need to be 90 minutes for the smaller groups, but the larger one in the evening would want 2 hours, something.
Okay,
Okay.
sounds good.
So in theory, we're okay to proceed? Okay, thank you so much for that feedback. All right, so the second half of this conversation is about the internal consultation, which has already begun today. We started with our first interview this morning. And so we've listed their first names, so it's a little informal. But these are the folks that we would like to speak with directly, and they include all of you. So we will be hoping to strike one-on-one interviews face-to-face, unless someone is uncomfortable with COVID or any other reason. So we would like to have those personal interviews between myself and Holly and each one of these individuals in a group of 3, so that we have lots of opportunity to listen and record. Those 2-person interview formats are really acceptable and positive for us. So that being said, these are the individuals we'd like to sort of require or see if we could get there. And I recognize some people are leaving on vacation and things like that. So we'd like to provide you with an online calendar for staff to use to help coordinate this. So there isn't a back and forth for each individual person. We're going to earmark dates and we will just be there whichever ones you select individually. So there'll be like quite an option list provided, and then people could just drop their name into it to book the appointment. And then further to that, we recognize that some of these conversations may lead us to want to have more. And so that may mean going back to another respondent to revisit a question or 2, Or it may mean Michelle and I having a conversation about in the support teams, who can I have permission to speak to? Okay, so we're reserving the right to do a deeper dive if we detect the need for that, but ultimately, these are the must-haves or the really would love to have on the list. And I know that we have to look at vacation and that quite quickly, so we're gonna provide you with that calendar in our report on Monday morning. Okay, so that everybody has that.
Prior to the interviews, will you have a basic outline of some of the things you're gonna be,
Yes.
looking for
These are
feedback on?
topics, yes, yeah, we try to keep the interviews quite open-ended in the sense of making sure we don't lead for specific questions, and so we will lay out themes and topics to be aware of, okay, before you come in. But certainly no, there won't be any need to necessarily prepare or look at documentation or be well versed in all policies and quote bylaws and stuff, okay? Just a perspective-based conversation and experience and observations. Yeah. Okay. Wonderful. No objections to anyone on this list? All right, we can move forward. Thank you so much. Okay, so this slide is of great importance to me because, of course, as we go through this project, we would really, we must maintain our ethics in terms of privacy and confidentiality throughout. And so at all open meetings and sessions, of course, we cannot refer to any one person, any one pay salary, anything that would be private in nature. That is sort of a general rule for all of us involved here. But I would like to review some of the key points of communication that require privacy and just making sure we're all on the same page with respect to this. So the first one is document exchanging. So far, we have discussed a huge number of documents that are needed, from payroll records right through to bylaw and policy, performance management reports, samples of all sorts of different documents, and pay grids and all that included. And so what this means is that so far we have taken a hard copy approach where I pick up documents from this location and they are not transferred through email or Google Drive mechanisms. That being said, once those documents are in my hand, they need to be distributed to a number of people. So we will do scan, copy, and containing in a secured server environment or a hard drive environment for people. But with respect to documents coming from you to us, we've taken this paper approach. Do you have a mechanism here to do digital secured transfer of documents?
Not at this time.
No. Okay, so it's gonna be a bit paper heavy and printer heavy, but I think that is the most secure way. And then we will contain all of those documents in one secured file in the locked room in our facility, and then shred those at the finale of the project, okay? Unless anything's material for the deliverables, which will be contained in your report. So that is sort of what we were thinking. Is everybody in agreement that that protocol preserves the privacy of what's contained in the documents? Okay. All right, the other element on here that is important to me is about a private interview setting, and I recognize that this space has multiple little offices and tuck-away areas, but they are not all soundproof. And so I am of the mind that maybe the interviews happen in Golden Lake, but that's up for debate, of course. But I do think that having not even the ability to overhear or walk past or anything like that is going to be of critical importance for your staff interviews. I recognize that requires more time for them to drive there and show up for that. So I just wanted to get any feedback about location and where you believe we should be having these interviews. It's also possible they can come to our quarters, but that's another further commute for everyone into Pembroke.
The Golden Lake Community Hall is probably going to be in a secure location for discussion, because the only other people in there would be in the evening, would be fire department practicing on Thursday evenings upstairs. And there's double walls between that and the post office. So that would be probably the most secure setting. And internet if you require it and that sort of thing.
Okay. Okay, good. So we can work with Dawn to book that for those interviews. Okay, great. So when we prepare the calendar for Monday, we'll just make sure there's no one already booked in any of those slots and kill those slots before we offer them. Okay, so a little bit of cross check there. Okay, great. Thank you for that feedback. Non-disclosure agreement. So Michelle and I had a discussion about a document to protect it, like legally protect this process, and we are going to offer an NDA. Our firm has one internally for all people involved in this project, and even my assistant would be included in that and all those elements. But Michelle and I have agreed to sign one, or to review it and sign it sort of cradle to grave, so that at no point can we ever repeat what we learned here, unless it's public information like our external reviews and what we learned on the internet and through other sources. Okay, so anything we can't reference is contained in that. Okay, so we are going to engage that just so that all the employees feel well protected. Okay, closed and open sessions. Michelle and I have also made an agreement that if I detect or we detect anything of importance, of urgency in the course of these interviews, that her and I are the contact point for that. So I will go directly to Michelle with any risk that I detect in those interviews, which I suspect none, but just as a contingency moment. Open sessions otherwise. And so when we're having open sessions as council, we just have to be really careful that we're not using names or revealing any private information in our discussions. And then the town hall facilitation plan I've already reviewed with you. That's not really about privacy, it's more about management of people. But certainly whatever is said in those town hall settings is public information, so would not be contained by the NDA. Okay. And we will have recorders at those sessions to take notes in that, and those notes will be public. Okay. All right, any questions about privacy and tools for confidentiality?
For town hall facilitation, will they be taped?
We try not to tape, but we can if that's requested. So we have the equipment to be able to do recordings and voice recordings. But technically we usually like to take minutes or notes and then publish that. But it's up to you guys if you want.
I think video recording is gonna be difficult if you're having to break out spaces and tables. I don't think there'll be much good benefit to it. Like, just as I understand how you're gonna do the process.
Yeah.
I think you'd be focused more on one area, or you have to bring another person in and bounce from area to area, and you're not gonna get the whole discussion anyway.
That's right. And so the best case scenario if any recording is offered is audio. But what we tend to find is that folks aren't as open when they know they're being recorded. And I realize that there are pros and cons to that. But genuinely, we always want to see the truth. And that can be hard when we're not being recorded. But at least if they know the notes are public, they'll not go crazy. Yeah. Is there a consensus on recording or whether that's something you want? The only reason for me to have that is if you wanted to be able to review this and to rationalize what I'm recording on, right? Which we're gonna record accurately, so it's up to you if you want that backup or not.
So after you have the town hall and then you look at all your notes and stuff like that, what if something came up, for instance, that this is just an example, nobody wants to volunteer firefighter in the department. But in your plan, you're talking about the volunteers and you have the pay grid and you're doing all this stuff. Like what if then through the town hall meeting, something surprisingly comes up that changes the way you were going to navigate or changes your path? What would you do with that?
When we detect like massive change like that, pivots, as we would say, in a consultation environment, it's a singular point of data. So we don't look at that and say that must be addressed. We say that must be dove into. And so sometimes what happens in that environment for us is the recommendation would be look into this more, this question that was raised, because to be fair, to deploy a big survey tool or research mechanism to answer that validity of that observation is beyond the scope of the program. And so we would note it as a piece of importance to reflect on. But if I actually believe I can prove it, what they said, that we are out of legislative compliance on this, I will investigate that on my own, determine if that's a risk point material to bring to that mechanism we talked about me seeking out Michelle's advice.
Okay,
So two possibilities there, unprovable, I put it in as a recommendation for investigation. If I think it's important and we believe that it's material enough to look at and to recommend that, or it's prove it. And see Michelle immediately about it.
because there's a number of residents that think that the amount of money we pay for the library is too much, right? So like, let's say if 10 people came and said, I don't think we should do that. I'm just wondering how that you navigate through that, but I see what you're going to do, and maybe it's just something that, you know, if you're telling us there is a concern about this, and maybe through your research, you're gonna say, yes, what you're paying is a little more than you should, then that's something we would, as a council, decide which way we want to deal with that.
That's right.
Okay,
Often,
But
but
it
it's
seems
get
like-
further investigation,
Right.
often.
but there's a mechanism kind of in place, okay.
It's like your speed study.
Mhm.
Someone says this is too fast. Talk about it enough, you order a speed study,
Right,
right? You don't make a decision before you learn. So it'll be the same as you're used to.
okay,
Yeah,
thanks.
no problem. Okay. I think that one is it.
I think so.
Okay, and so I think our final piece here is to collect your perspectives now. So as usual, we're on point here for the timeline of the meeting. So I'm deeply interested in your perspectives at the front end of this project. I know that it's been on your radar for a while. And as returning counselors, and congratulations to you all, by the way. I really care about what you see for the outcome of this. And so I'm gonna, what I say, zoom out with you to the 10,000 mile perspective, and being careful not to use any private information in this discussion. But I would really love to hear, what do you think is gonna happen, or what are you looking for to have happen as a result of this project? Vision, outcomes.
Sometimes I think in any organization, you have tons and tons of policies, right? And then each group seems to have a different policy, and then and if you have a crossover person, they're like, well, how am I getting this here and not getting this there? So from my point of view, like, consistency, as much as you could, would be very important. You know what I mean? So if the firefighters get something like this, is it important that also Public Works gets that, or like those kind of tie-ins? Because I think that makes it much simpler than for like the accounting clerk, or much simpler for the clerk when dealing with things, because there's that consistency there. So from my point of view, those things, like keeping it as simple as possible, right? And of course, another thing is there ways that we can save money through all our wages, so we can use those monies to like improve our roads or improve a facility? I think that those things are important. Like, is there an overlap there that doesn't have to be an overlap, or is there an overlap that could, you know, somebody could work on that, which frees them up to be able to work on that, you know? Anyway, those are some of the things I think.
So I heard consistencies,
Mhm,
simple and clear,
mhm,
and then certainly this idea of efficiencies.
mhm.
And making sure that work duplication is not happening, and yet gaps are,
That's right.
that nice turnover, we call them relay turnovers in roles. When does one accountability end and one accountability begin,
Mhm.
this kind of thing? Yeah, okay, thank you.
I think one of the things, I think that is gonna be a common theme is, at the end of the day, is the ratepayer getting the best service for the money that we're taking in? And I think a lot of the public concern out there is gonna come down to staffing numbers. You know, do we have too many staff? Do we have too little? Again, are we duplicating efforts? You know, by having two people doing the same thing in different ways. So yeah, I think clearly defining roles within our workforce as to who is responsible for what, and let them work within that window, but not work in a silo. So yes, this is what I'm focusing on, but I need to understand how it affects this. But I don't need to be dealing with this. I deal with this, and everybody does their link in the chain to make everything work, and then you have a nice strong chain by the time you're done. So I think defining roles, and that's going to be a challenge in some places, because we do have multiple hatters. You know, when is someone doing this role? When is someone doing this role? How do you eliminate duplication? I think that's going to be a big challenge to try and sort out as part of the review.
Absolutely, yeah, we're keenly aware of those realities, and it's part of what we hope to really see strategically about this plan, right? It's in a smaller community, of course, we need to lean into multiple job profiles. This is a normal thing for so many smaller communities. And so it's how do we ensure that there are clear accountabilities, right? So when you're talking about that chain, the linking is where the communications and the steps and the procedures overlap, but otherwise it's independent work or independent duties, right? So the dots and the lines, so to speak, that's a really important part of this outcome, is understanding the standard operating procedures. Who gets this relayed, Tom? What's the communication protocol? All those tools and all that, yeah. Thank you for including that.
Councillor Robinson.
Yes, Councillor, Mayor Bros. I think one of the things that we also have to look at when I'm hoping to see from this is the opinion of the residents tends to be is that we're getting very heavy in staff, but the impact of staff responsibility has increased when it comes to compliance. So the nature of their jobs themselves and the reporting that has to be done is significantly more than it was before. So while we're looking at efficiencies and how it can impact the bottom line for our residents, we have to look at the job descriptions that are here now are certainly not what they were 10 years ago. The other thing that what I'm hoping to get out of this is our compensation that we have for staff. Is it relative to what the market is demanding? Because what we're seeing is that salaries are going through the roof, and how does that impact our budget? So I'm hoping that those are some of the key elements that would come out of this.
I have to agree with Maria, so Maria said that. When I was out campaigning, a lot of people, one of the questions I asked is, how come we have so many people in our office? But they don't realize the workload that's in the township office. There's more and more stuff to do all the time. But that is one of the big questions in the residents.
Yeah, we expect to get that at the town hall, yeah.
Just a question going back to the scope overall on this. Is there going to be any delving into use of technology within the workplace to make the job more effective or easier? You know, are we working with the best options out there, or are we working with stuff because we've worked with it for X, Y, Z years? I guess will that be part of the scope of the service review as well?
We have to include any tools that are being used in a job plan. So communication tools, for sure. But we do know that that's going to be part more, I would say the detail on like comparison of, you know, if you were going to do an internal chat bot, all the comparisons of the platforms you could buy and all that would be beyond scope. But what we will do is looking at those SOPs, because part of what makes roles inefficient is inefficient or non-clear steps that people should be taking, protocols and communications that pair with those milestones. So we know that the tools are embedded in that analysis, some of them, right? So how are we using the website? How are we notifying people that information needs to change on that, right? So different things like that, protocols.
So we kind of have a satellite office in Golden Lake, right at the Public Works Building.
Yes.
Will you look at that to see if it's an efficient use of our time and energy? Or not?
I'm assuming we're gonna pull some of that information out of the interview with the lead of that department.
Right.
So we hope to ask questions about that and see the perspective, but it depends on what the viewpoint is at that real ground level perspective.
Right.
And then we may circle into like perhaps the council's interviews with those questions for you to reflect on them as well.
Okay.
Yeah, so we hope to get your detailed input in your interview and prepare those questions in such a manner that have been flagged from other interviews.
Okay.
And we may request a second or a shorter one
And how long do you think those personal interviews will take?
About an hour. We want to allow for a little buffer there, but some people will have a lot to say and some people will have very little to say. That's fairly normal, but we try to build the questions in such a way that it gets people talking and sharing examples with us. So we can understand the practicality of how it's happening, right? If we don't know how it is to be at work, the policies are just vacant of that context, right? So yeah, stories and going into that trust dive. Yeah.
So a couple of things, internal, external. I'll start with internal. I like where you're going with looking at so much of the documentation, excuse me, salary grids, the HR policies, etc. And even talking about staffing levels, again, I don't know if the public understands, for example, how much technology has changed in their jobs. So there's a learning component consistently. There's also all of the demands from the province. I mean, our asset management plan is one where it has gone from just identifying roads to now it encompasses the whole thing. How is that maintained? Who looks after that? How is that all, kept current? So there's those components. We also have a great staff with continually upgrading their education to, have more opportunity to take on more responsibility. And I think sometimes people think we have too much staff, or maybe, hopefully, part of the review indicates that maybe we don't have enough. Or maybe we have to take a look at how some of that work is more efficiently dealt with. Externally, I'm hoping that there might be some opportunities to look at how can we improve our service by engaging with our neighboring municipalities that may keep our costs at a more reasonable level. And I can't help but think of fire, where the cost of a pumper truck 4 years ago is now 3 times more than what it was then. And it's just not sustainable for a small municipality. So what are some of the opportunities that might be available when we look outside of our own community? Also internally, I'm hoping when on the HR part, and I know another resource, and Michelle can certainly hook you up with the HR department of the county, because they certainly have a wealth of expertise there, is having eventually, when we're through this, an HR policy that is very clear, and maybe a handout that new employees get that spells out what are the expectations, what are the compensations, what are the benefits. That I think would be something that would be really helpful as far as clarifying and standardizing how we not only approach, but how we compensate, how we evaluate our employees, because we want to make sure we can keep them as long as we can as well.
Well heard. Thank you so much for bringing all those points up. And, at every step of the way, we are going to align this to your strategic plan, right? So I'm intimately aware of it, as you all know. So the idea of the communications project in there has to be a real transparent approach to this outcome in your communications planning to the community, right? They have to know what the new job, what the full duties are for the one role. What are they all doing? That could be a really interesting way to advance that project in your strategic plan. So you may see that as a recommendation from us, is to look at that communication protocol on the change management for the community for whatever decisions that you make.
The other helpful piece would be if the education to the public on how much or I should say how little of the money that we take in we have control over. We end up with maybe 50% of the total budget that we actually have input in how it gets spent.
Right. Yeah. That's important.
And just as an aside, and maybe when you have the town hall, to me, it's how we can reach the community better. Because you can see by the voters turnout, it wasn't astronomical. Lots of times when we do a survey, you're not getting tons of people with results, right? But yet there's lots of residents that complain and ask questions, right? So is there some kind of tool, or what can we do better? How can, them spread the word? Because I think that's really important. If you're gonna complain, then you have to be part of the solution, and don't say you didn't know about it. Tell us how we can get the information out to you, so you will know about it. And I don't know how you can do that, that might just be a side question you would ask, but there's so many people out there that say, well, I didn't know that, I didn't know that, well, it was in the leader, well, it was on the website, or well, did you sign up for that communication tool? You know, it's just, it's difficult, the only thing they really seem to care about is the amount of taxes they have to pay, and making sure their tax bill is paid on time. And then, of course, it's like some negatives they'll throw in, but I agree with Mayor Bowles. I don't think sometimes they realize how much has been downloaded from the province, the federal and provincial governments that the municipalities never had to deal with before.
Right. No, this is a really important conversation, and we hope to go there for sure in the town hall discussions and understanding what good communication looks and feels like. Some of the nuances inside the strategic plan about the town listener role that we had suggested, and how Cameron is actually operating in that way right now, is you can see a clear difference. But what we do know is this idea of like civic engagement and getting people to actively participate on the committees and things like that immediately reduces your personnel burden if that's well coordinated. So one of our recommendations may be to do a governance review of how committees are drawn and how people are filling them and what are they for and what are the terms of reference say, how they can carry out and how they can spend or not. So all of those things can be part of how you use volunteers and dedicated, passionate community members to advance some of your work. Right, so that is not beyond us in these recommendations. We certainly understand the importance of collaboration. It's a small town way. We can't just have everything housed in the staff complement. Okay.
And it has been interesting, and kudos to staff, because since we started the Communication Connect, which is a free service for every one of our residents, and we also have the what's it called, or if someone has a complaint, they can file it on our service tracker.
Yeah.
And as I talk to more residents and explain, here are all the tools you now have if you want to get your voice heard more clearly. And I think it's growing because our Connect is growing in numbers. Service tracker, people are getting more familiar with it. And just as you're saying, that communication, that having more opportunity for people to have that voice heard. They know a service tracker that there's a certain, usually not more than 2 or 3 days before they get a response or somebody investigates and returns the call. And that really does help, put residents at ease maybe, or more comfortable that they're getting service for their tax dollars.
So let's make sure we have some information flyers on those 2 programs at the town hall.
We should make a presentation about it right in the facilitation. I'll deliver information about it right live, because that's a really great synergy. Like, what's so important about the fact is that you built it, you're welcoming the input on a regular basis, right? But it's the normalization of that that's the long runway. So how do we get an intentional strategy going to campaign for this, right? What does it look like? And you have some really creative folks around the staff group to help you with that, but maybe the recommendation is to promote that more and to really get it out there, that word, so you've got the tools, you've made the moves to include your community, and clearly, just based on the partner engagement that's been happening, it's picking up, right? People are really seeing the opportunities inside the plan and your new way of working and living here, so, yeah. I agree with everything that's been said. Really great, interesting outcomes that we can embed in our thinking.
Well, I don't know if anybody else read it, but just in the latest edition of Municipal World, there was an excellent article in there about strategic planning. And if you read that article, the strategic plan they're recommending aligns so accurately with ours. It was mind-blowing. I was really, really surprised when I followed the whole thing, and it talked about building well-being in your community is the greatest route to success on your strategic plan.
Bingo. And you guys knew in 2020. A long time, right? So I agree with that perspective. I helped author that plan, as you know, so we believe in that way of leadership too. And we also know how amazing the people are here and how giving they are and how there's so much talent. So some of them will earn money and some of them will just give into this township. So how do we create that momentum and that organization of people? It starts with self-organization. And so this service review is going to bring such an organization to the way we work here, that it will invite through that organization further participation, because it's simple, it's clear, it's easy, it's effective. Because people like to get things done, right? When they join a committee, when they do a volunteering thing. Talking around a table only serves so many types of people, right? They like to accomplish things and see the results. So if we can express that kind of opportunity ongoing, it's just gonna naturally pick up the way a good business would, right? The kinks of the first few weeks of a restaurant aren't reflective of what they're gonna be like in 2 years, right? So we're just working out the kinks on the staff side so that we can invite the community to join us on those levels, right? Yeah, that's really important. I love that. And the budget reality, right? So one of the things we know about the process is there's a potential for all of these recommendations to have a financial reality to it, right? So how are we gonna look at revenue streams and different things like that with our recommendations? We really wanna make sure we're balancing the recommendations with fiscal responsibility. So we're gonna make sure that's included as well. Innovative ways to balance these asks.
Well, I think another positive was the fact that, the election indicated that, in the previous election, I think we had 14 candidates running for 5 positions. In this one, we had 7 candidates running for 5. So one of the messages I kept hearing as well, and I think it's just an indication through the whole process, is that people were happy with what we were doing. They were certainly happy that Algona Wilberforce wasn't the center of attention in the local paper every week. And they appreciated the fact that they saw things moving forward.
Absolutely. I mean, and as an outsider to this community, residence wise, I heard the same story all the way in Pembroke, with my other municipal colleagues from Renfrew County and beyond, in fact. So yeah, you did do an incredible job as a group and from an underdog position and during pandemic. So bingo. Your plan is working, your team is working, and this is what I feel is one of the really important strokes moving forward. So you're gonna have a lot of really good.
I have to agree with Mayor Burrows. The last 4 years have been 100% better than the first 4 years that we were on phone.
Bingo.
Yeah.
I agree.
Before, we were in the paper every week, like people in Ottawa buying the paper just to read about this. It wasn't good for a township.
I know, yeah, I followed your story very closely because at the time I was managing 24 community service at the immigration project, and we always had to keep track of what was going on. So it was a tough time.
It must have been a lot of reading that.
It was a lot of reading. Yeah, where I work on the project as well. So yeah, it's a thing, but behind you, officially, right, long ago. And the rise that's been happening here is incredible. And so although change is hard for constituents, right? Everybody goes through it at different paces. And what's so interesting to me though is how much you've done and how dynamic the projects are and so forward thinking. It's of course going to be a bit of a ease into it for some people, right? And seeing the extra spending on staff, but do they know how much you've raised? And all of that too, right? So it's a really important thing to take them by the hand in through your change and your growth. And that's going to be definitely part of our recommendations is how can we do that? How can we include them on these decisions you're making so that everyone gets it? Why? And the importance of it, right? Because great jobs locally is also a really good thing to have, right? Really good township level jobs, man, that's good for this economy here. Good to attract talent, and people that want to live in the community that's like this. So it's all part of the story. I've lost track of time. Oh, I always forget there's this spot here. It's so techy in here now. Anything else you'd like to share with me with respect to your vision and important issues?
So one of the projects that's kind of sitting on the back burner is our is it RCB or RBC? I can never get the acronym.
RBC Single Bank.
RBC. So it's a portable sewage treatment unit.
Yeah.
And we certainly are quite interested in trying to incorporate that into providing more services. Especially in the Eatonville area where we have Foodland, we have Food Motel. That are currently on septic system that could be switched over, so. Just another project, I think we have natural gas coming to Eatonville. You know, we have high-speed fiber that they're still working on, putting into our municipalities, so, yeah, there's also some. External projects that are bringing real benefits to our community.
That's excellent. We will hope to gather all those details in your interviews, but I know that if there's anything that we should be thinking about for directed questions at the focus group at the town hall. About future planning like that, we can always embed that into the facilitation plan, so please note those for sure to spell in your interview too. Because, you know, right up to that day of facilitation, we can rejig, right? We're quite agile with that stuff, so let's make sure we ask the questions that can feed some of those moments for you, like let's be synergistic about the opportunity of this contract. Yeah. Anything, team, are we seeing any gaps of questions or things, the input that you'd like to bring forward? No, I think it's all been covered it all. Feeling good so far? I know it's sort of a recap, but we already did on Tuesday.
Councilor Robinson?
I'm very good, thank you.
Oh, I thought your hand was up, sorry.
No.
Okay. And of course, we will do our best to keep this report concise and direct and usable and capacity oriented when we write teaching sections always, right? About how to use it, so that the staff can go and then hopefully it'll be a really great tool. All right, well, hopefully it will be a really great tool for everyone to use moving forward. So I encourage regular communication through Michelle. So again, she's still my point of contact. And so if there's anything further that you think of tonight and you wake up in the middle of the night and go, oh, I should have said that, please just flow anything like that through Michelle to me. And then or reserve it for your interview.
I just have one thing that came to mind, because of this process and the information gathering and the connection with the community. It's going to set up, I think, a bit of a roadmap for how we readjust our strategic plan moving forward.
Sure is. Sure is. You would want to almost see the service review recommendations as the sixth project. Right? Because it's the organizational excellence project, the walk the talk project in your plan is very much about these moving parts. So it's just adjacent to that, but it's very much contained therein. And we probably will speak to your communications and branding project as a necessary tool to unleash this stuff. So we're going to speak to your plan throughout. It's going to be all deeply aligned to those projects. Because they do involve specific skill sets. You're going to carry them out, right? The commercial kitchen specifically, those movements, those require very specific skill sets. So we have to look at all those pieces forward thinking always. Yeah.
Excellent.
Yay. Wonderful. Thank you so much for this lively discussion and so thankful to be welcomed back here. Thank you for your trust in us. And we will continue to show up and do our best, absolutely. So thank you again. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So next on the agenda is the 5.2, which is the bylaw regarding the appointment of the speed limit review study ad hoc committee. Is there, did you want to bring up the report, please?
Their report was just the bylaw.
Okay. just for council's information, after our last meeting, when we talked about the Stephen study, Councilor Byrne approached me after the meeting and asked if he could sit on the ad hoc committee, which is the reason why his name is on there. You don't know if any other
I
council is interested in.
cannot see it. I'm not able to see anything.
Staff is going to put the share up for you.
Okay.
So
Okay,
while
thank
Councilor
you.
Robinson is reading that, I'll just ask for a mover and a seconder for moved by Councilor Buckle, seconded by Councilor Becky Schoenfeld. The council enacts the following bylaw 2022-61 being a bylaw to appoint a speed limit review study ad hoc committee. Comments, questions? Seeing none, Councilor Burns,
Yes,
Councilor Buckle,
Yes.
Councilor Robinson,
Yes,
Councilor Reggie Schoenfeld.
Yes,
And a yes, it's carried, thank you. And then item number 6 is that we have to go into close pursuant to section 239(2)(c)(k) of the Municipal Act, 1 acquisition or disposition of land, 1 plans and instructions negotiations. You're gonna move in a second, moved by Councilor Buckwald, seconded by Councilor Burns. Councilor Burns? Yeah.
question.
Councilor Buckwald?
Yes.
Councilor Robinson?
Mr. Mayor,
Oh, sorry.
And there is no matter about it, I get quite a few big loss.
Okay. And we're going in at 2:30 p.m. Councilor Robinson,
yes,
Councilor Reggie Schoenfeld,
Yes,
I yes, very, thank you. And thank you very much, Shayla, and to the team for excellent presentation. I have 7.1, which is a resolution that council directs staff to proceed as directed in regard to land acquisition in closed session. I'm going to move in a second, moved by Councilor Burke, seconded by Councilor Robinson. Councilor Burke,
yes,
Councilor Buckwald,
yes.
Councilor Robinson,
yes,
Councilor Reggie Schoenfeld.
yep, yes.
Yes, carried, thank you. And then we have our confirming bylaw, that bylaw 2022-62 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the council for November the 25th, 2022, be read a first and second time is 25th day of November, 2022, moved by Councilor Buckwald, seconded by Councilor Reggie Schoenfeld. Read a third time and finally passed this 25th day of November, 2022. Councilor Burke?
yes,
Councilor Buckwald?
Yes.
Councilor Robinson?
yes,
Councilor Reggie Schoenfeld?
Yes,
And a yes, that's carried, thank you. And item number 9 is adjournment. That this November 25th, 2022 special meeting of council adjourns at 3 p.m. right on the dot. Moved by Councilor Burke, seconded by Councilor Buckwald. Councilor Burke,
yes.
Councilor Buckwald,
Yes.
Councilor Robinson,
yes.
Councilor Reggie Schoenfeld.
yes.
And a yes, that's carried. Thank you all very much.